joining me today is a wonderful, bright young filmmaker from New York City, although she is from Moldova. And yeah, Natalie Curea? Did I pronounce it correctly?
You said it right.
Thank you. Natalie and I have known each other for probably for the past year or so, especially going on with the pandemic. And I've been like almost a champion of her work, especially seeing her uh, first short film. Well, not first short film, but first feature short film that she did, post college, called Jump, which we'll be talking about a little later. But yeah, Natalina, uh, thank you for coming on to the podcast. Uh, how did you get into filmmaking?
Okay, thank you for inviting me today.
Of course.
So my my journey to filmmaking is an unusual one. I never thought that I'm gonna be a filmmaker. You know, sometimes children, people are like they always knew what they wanted to be when they grow up. You hear that all the time. Oh, as a child, I wanted to be this or that. In my case, filmmaking was never part of my dream. I actually did journalism back home. I have a bachelor degree in journalism, and I even worked briefly as a journalist on a radio station. So filmmaking came much later on when I came to New York City. I wanted to initially I wanted to do a master degree. I wanted to continue my artistic journey, and then you probably know this. I don't know if you know this, but in the USA, European diplomas are not recognized, are not accepted.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that is, because
it's a weird thing. So
yeah. So I'm not gonna even get into that because it's a long story. So I was like, they were like, oh, if you want to do a master degree, you have to complete your bachelor degree. So I was like, they want to take the same classes. So for me at the time, it didn't make sense to study the same subjects again. So I was eager to learn something new. That's how I came to filmmaking. I was like, I'm going to take a few, because at first there was like a few liberal arts classes, and I was like, let me take a class that was called, I think, Introduction to Film or History of Cinema, something like that.
Which is usually like the same class, just like labeled differently. Like when you hear Intro to Film or like something that's usually like 101 or 100, that's essentially the same class. It's just that they probably label it differently.
Right. I think every college has a different name for it, but essentially you study the same thing.
Yeah.
So I really liked it, and I studied for like almost 4 years, and that's how that's what I'm here today. But I love it, So for me, it was like a soul searching kind of thing. I guess is much later on, and I think it was meant to be. I think that the journalism, because journalism is also, it's something. It's also you telling a story, right? It's just not fiction, right? Because journalists tell the truth. You have different ethics goes into that profession. With a filmmaker, you have you have more freedom, especially fiction films, as you know. Even though I made some documentaries as part of the college, curriculum, I love making fiction films. And Jump is indeed my first film after college, and it's a 19 minutes film, a short, and it was more like an experiment for me. I'm still trying to find my voice, trying to figure out what I want to do, what kind of genre films I want to do, what subjects, because I'm really passionate about the human condition, the psychological aspects of the human psyche. So
which I can see already in Jump. So yeah.
Exactly right. Jump is very subtle, and it explores the idea of the human psyche and also the disconnection from the self. And Yeah, I mean, yeah, right now Jump is, as you know, at various film festivals, and with the pandemic, the screenings were mostly online. And for the first time, we're gonna have it in-person screening this October.
Yeah.
Yeah, October 21st. And yeah, let's see how that plays out.
I think, and right now, we're filming this like in the we're filming this like a month before that, those festivals really hit. And one of the places is the Producers Club, and I've been to Producers Club as an actor and as a patron to see my friends a show, to act in a show. And the Producers Club is actually a wonderful place if you need to do something like independent. Uh, Owned or produce an independent show in New York City, because not only is it a good place to use as a theater, especially if you are in a theater uh, mindset like I am, because filmmaking, because it's weird because my passion is theater, obviously. I can't really stress it enough, but filmmaking has been a new passion of mine for the past, like, say, past couple of years, especially going to Brooklyn College and studying all that stuff, and essentially going into podcasting as a like almost as a personal hobby of mine slash side hustle slash what have you call it. And it's like what you said before. It's like there are things that you just find that are passions of yours that may not come up into your life until much, much later. You may have like a goal into say, oh, I want to become a writer, right? And but your background might be in is it's might be in English writing, so you might be have like a novelist type of approach. But like over the years, you may take a screenwriting class because screenwriting is writing, and sure enough, you might find I want to say like a love for writing scripted formats and all that stuff too. So yeah, it definitely feels like once you go into college and find yourself, it's like relatively easy. You mentioned that you were a journalist at your radio station. I was a journalist at my radio station. Shout out to WBCR. I mean BC, yeah, WBCR, Brooklyn College Radio, and it was fun because I was actually editing my own stories with my own news team, sending out, leads and stuff like that too. It was fun for the first half of I want to say the first half, which was the fall semester, and then going into the spring semester, I had this like notion of, oh, I want to do a lot of stuff, and then boom, the pandemic hit, and we couldn't just do everything. Uh, we had to do essentially everything on the computer, all that stuff, like literally at home. So it kind of like put a damper on things, because the last story that I was trying to do before the pandemic struck was that the day like maybe a week or two beforehand, the library at Brooklyn College happened to shut down, not like shut down because they had to put all the uh, part-time professors in there because they didn't have an office. So as a journalist, I was like, oh man, this is a good idea for a story. And then as I was trying to get everything uh, like formatted and everything. The next day, oh, by the way, that's all fixed now. I'm like, so you can imagine like me trying to format a story about how, essentially all the students couldn't really use a particular room in the library because all the part-time adjuncts, professors were like, were like literally using that thing. So I imagine, being a journalist at your radio station, it was fun, but at the same time, it was also like, oops, sorry, hang on. Oh, sorry, I heard my parents in the background. But yeah, if you were, I imagine that your journalism at your school, they probably gave you like, find a story for each week, and then at the end, and then the following week you edit that story, put it
Exactly.
into newspaper, and then the following week, I mean, and then right as you're done with that story, we set you up with a new story for next week. So
We had to do everything, right. We had to go in the field and find, because I was in the news department, and it was I worked both on the campus, but also on the national radio, outside college, even though I was still a student.
oh,
And
nice.
yeah, so we had to go in the field, find the story, come back to the studio. You have to write it in a news format if you have to shoot something. Anyway,
Right.
but because we will talk about Jump, we'll get into Jump and
Oh yeah, we will.
you know uh, in depth. But about my journalistic background is that, yeah, like we used to go in the field, find the story, then come back and write it in a news format, and then on the same day we had to record it, and be live on the news. Um, but again, it was on the radio, so it's different. Like filmmaking is, I think, is more creative.
Yeah,
As earlier, and especially with fiction films, you use your imagination and make up a story. Uh, Based on any subject you like. And with Jump, that's exactly what I did. Jump is it's not just a clown story. I mean,
no,
it is the protagonist, is a middle-aged party clown who goes through this existential crisis. And I think he comes to the realization that his dreams would never come true, his
yeah,
child dream. And he's having an honest conversation with himself, which himself being the little girl. Thanks to this little
yeah,
girl, we have access to his to his thoughts, his emotions, and what he's truly thinking about himself. Because you can see a lot of self-loathing and regret. He's thinking about whatever, about his past, because it's been like 20 years. Like, you can see in the beginning of the film that he's a child and he wants to be a magician, right? It's very subtle, so you really
yeah,
have you really have to watch it at least twice to understand its meaning, because it's really subtle. It's not, right there, and it's psychological. So every time I watched it, I found, new meaning, because there's a lot of symbols there. It's the fire and the clown nose, and
yeah.
yeah, I don't want to say too much, so I don't want to spoil it
You,
for too.
you don't have to, even though it is your film. But people,
Yeah.
once this film gets on to a point where it's like it is on streaming, it is streaming on YouTube and stuff like that too. You definitely do want to have people like watch the film for themselves. But yeah,
Have their own interpretation, because as a director, I can't uh, tell people what to think, even though, there was a message, and I wrote the screenplay, and I know what this film is about and what it means. At the same time, I want people to have their own interpretation, because, like, based on the feedback that I got back in, I think, March, when my film premiered at the Berlin Liftoff, right? Um, Everyone had a different interpretation of the film, and that is fascinating, and a lot of people identify with the main character.
yeah,
Um,
like you were just saying, like what you just said was that essentially I have my own personal interpretation, which was probably it was more along the lines of his what's call it, his like his past not really catching up with himself, but just like his past just like haunting him of like his past failures and whatnot. Like that's my interpretation. But when I do see the thing again, it's probably going to be like uh it'll probably be a different interpretation to what I previously had because like what you just said before, you know each time when you watch a film, there's always a different interpretation of what you see as an, either, you know, with me, it's like I try to see I try to see some of the stuff I see as a, I try my hand with screenwriting, so I do have, I've written a couple of things that have been successfully put into film, and, you know, as a screenwriter, it's not really the best work I probably have done, but the actors doing the interpretation has made it, into something that's like, oh, okay, that's even incredible. They're able to do all that stuff. But as a screenwriter, I'll probably, I'll be watching the film and like, if I was that writer, I'd probably done that more differently. But then when I'm watching films as a regular person, like maybe a film like this as a regular person, it's like for some reason it's like these two different sides. Whereas like the what I've learned as a screenwriter and what I've learned as a regular filmmaker, not filmmaker, just a regular film goer, it kind of like intermixes with one another. So, last time I might have one interpretation of your short film, and then next time when I see it, I'll probably had way more different interpretation where I had the last time, where it's just like, there's also a couple of things I probably didn't notice the first time that I noticed the second time. So yeah, it definitely does help when you watch something, uh, not like on a second or third viewing, especially if it's like a short film, because short like short films are, even though short films are like 15, 20 minutes, sometimes even longer than that, like maybe even 45 minutes to an hour. You do have to like maybe rewatch these short films a few times over to notice things that you haven't noticed before. That's one of the things that I learned in my intro classes, was that we watched all these short films that would be very minute in terms of like length, and like maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that too. So like traditional short films, and then we were talking about it like after the class, and I would imagine like it's the same thing where it's like if you have shown your short film or any number of your short films to a class, they will probably have different other like interpretations to what you know because interpretations, because it's an intro class and all that stuff too.
I feel like we also, because we are in this field, as an actor and as a filmmaker, I think we watch films differently, than let's say someone who doesn't work this field, because
Yeah.
uh, we can see certain mistakes, and we can see how a certain shot was taken, or how a scene was edited. So I think it's a different experience, like I could, I can watch Jump and I know exactly, well, because I was on set too. But even professionals can I mean, mostly when it comes to technical aspects, like right now, for example, when I watch a movie, I can't really enjoy it the same way as I used to before, because I can, analyze, and I can see, oh, this shot was taken this way,
Yeah.
it's taken this way. So it took the joy out of
It
out of
does.
the
It,
movie.
it a good thing was that a few nights ago you were watching Titanic, and I kind of like messaged you. You was like, it's like I kind of brought up the notion of, there was like more room for Jack on the thing, and you probably, and I think you said like, but as it's like that's just how the thing was written and all that stuff. But I imagine like now as a filmmaker, you watch something, especially if it's old, especially if it's like an older film, and go, I love this movie, but I would probably have done this more differently if I had, directed it or wrote it.
You look for the logic, because even though it's a fiction film, but it's the couple, right? Jack and Rose, right? Uh,
Yeah.
even though it's part of true events, right? Titanic being based on a true,
Yeah.
their story is fiction. So I feel like sometimes, even though it's fiction, sometimes as filmmakers, you ask yourself like there still has to be a logic to it. You
Yeah.
can't unless it's science fiction. But even of science fiction, you still have to there still have to be a logic to the story, right? So I feel like if like even though like Jack could have been on the same floating thing as Rose,
Yeah.
right? And they'll build this happy ending, they get married and have kids and whatnot. It's just I think the ending would have been so different, like very Hollywood style.
Yeah.
And I feel like this way it's really like more of a they dramatize it.
Yeah.
That I think Titanic has the impact that it had. Otherwise, I think it would have having a different direction and not be the Titanic that we know as today.
Yeah.
I've watched that film like 5 times, and I think I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna watch it again because it's way too much. Uh,
Yeah, I think I have those type of problems where it's like I only need to watch a couple of film like this only well one Titanic is a very long movie too, and
you know,
so it's like close to maybe 3.5 hours, maybe 3 hours plus or something like that. But it is like 3 hours plus, so it's like and watching a film that's like 3 hours plus is like you only can watch it like maybe once or twice to really experience it. And and there are movies that are even longer than 3 hours plus that people do watch. So like I
like
think the longest movie ever recorded was maybe 28 days. I think I'm not sure, but it's like some sort of documentary or something like that. And that's how it usually is. If it's something longer than like 24 hours, it's like kind of classed as a documentary. But and then people who go and see that, it would like they would have it like split up in intervals. So you watch like 8 hours on one day, and then another 8 hours on another, and then another 8 hours on another day, and then the following week is like the same thing until it's like you're kind of like done with the movie. So it's like I imagine like when you're watching a film that you love, it is kind of like draining because there are a lot of movies I do love, but I watch them very sparingly because I don't want to be what's the term like overly like over like I want to enjoy other movies, but I have these movies, like I have comfort movies, but if I keep on watching these movies, like at some point it's like these don't really have the same type of impact as they do previously. It helps to if I'm watching like different type of movies, of course, but everything else is just like I'm definitely one of those type of people who were like I want to watch something that's like I haven't watched in years, and then if something happened to be related to that thing and it happens to be one of my favorite movies, sure enough, I'm like, you know what? I'll put on this as a appetizer. So when I go into my next movie, that's sort of like the same thing that I'll be watching. So it's like, again, it's weird being. I mean, it's not weird, but it's fun being a filmmaker, but at the same time, just trying not to overindulge yourself with all this film. At the same time, kind of like, you know what? I just want to watch one of my favorite films for tonight. And then it's like, I've watched Reservoir Dogs. Who many?
uh,
Uh, how many times now? It's probably like a bunch of times now. Probably like maybe like 6 or 7 times, like in my life. Like I'm not like one of those people who've seen it like 20 times or something like that. If it's a boring night and if I find a DVD, it's like, you know what, I haven't watched this movie in like years, so I'm gonna put it on, see how everything is, and then suddenly it's like I know why I liked this movie from like when I was young and all that stuff. But compared to a movie where people are like, oh, I've seen like this movie 20 times in theaters. I'm like, how do you
watch.
like
I
like
think 5 times, even 3 times. I think it's too many times. And I feel like sometimes, uh, like when you don't know what to watch and you just don't want to keep looking, you just you know what? I've seen Titanic. I know it's good. I'm gonna watch it. You know what I mean? But
yeah
I don't think I could watch a movie that's like more than 5 times. It's just I get bored easily anyway. So, but I don't know Tarantino. It's really not. I'm not a fan of his movie. I don't know. It's just not. I think I've watched his most recent one, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
yeah
and I got bored. I went to movie theater. I remember that was. 2019, right? 2019.
2019, yeah. Quentin Tarantino is an acquired taste. It's like there are filmmakers that are essentially like acquired tastes. Everything. Like you might not like his style of films, but every so often you might like a film of theirs that they may have done that wouldn't be you know like a good example of this is Steven Spielberg. Yeah, a few weeks ago I was watching The Terminal, and The Terminal isn't really
Watched it too, like two, three times, I think, of Tom Hanks. Yeah.
yeah. And I watched it as like, one, it's a romantic type of movie, and Steven Spielberg isn't like the type of director you would think he would do like a full-on like romance type of movie, but it's also like a comedy too, and set in New York too. So there you go too. But I'm watching, I'm like, wow, it kind of like I haven't watched that movie in like maybe when it came out in like 2004, 2000, it came out on video in 2004, 2005, around at the time. And rewatching it, and especially going into what's been happening with the news and everything, like a lot of it does hold up. It's like, but as a style choice, it's like you would not think that Steven Spielberg doing a romantic type of movie would be on the same level as, like, say, Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jurassic Park or
But that's what I
Saving,
love
yeah,
about
Saving
Spielberg.
Private Ryan and stuff like that too.
He has different movies that they don't look the same. You know what I mean? I mean, with Tarantino, you go to the movie theater and you know what to expect. You know, he has.
Yeah,
It's kind of like he has the same movie over and over again. It's just a different storyline. You know, Spielberg, uh, he has like different style. You know, for every movie. Like Terminal, you wouldn't even think that he made it, right? Steven
yeah,
Spielberg. And it's like, and I know that the movie is made based on I think it's inspired on true events.
yeah,
But that's the thing about Spielberg. Like every film that he does has something different to it. With Tarantino, it's kind of like all his 9 films, even Pulp Fiction, right? It's, you know, that you're gonna expect a lot of violence, a lot of blood, and it's like it's the same formula. You know what I mean?
yeah. His formula is very talkative and intermixed with violence, and essentially a lot of talking and a lot of violence, essentially. But when you watch a Steven Spielberg type of thing, you just get like a sense of magic, essentially, when you're watching it. A good example is this is Ridley Scott, who I love as a director, and he's done movies like Alien, uh, Troy,
Kind of director, right?
uh, Kingdom of Heaven, I think.
He did the Blade Runner, right?
Yeah, Blade Runner too. Uh, and and one of the things I love about Ridley Scott is he's always uh, pushing himself as a director. And I was just watching something about one of his films that came out like I think almost 10 years ago, The Counselor, and he was just joking about it. Was like, have I gone too much on this film? Because like The Counselor is a very violent movie, and but it's a very dark movie. So you would think that Ridley Scott would be perfect for this because it blends a very bleak type of storyline, but also blends in a very violent storyline, and you would not think that Ridley Scott would do like the type of violence that it would be shown in the movie, and he does it rather well. So yeah, there are directors that are very formulaic, whereas this is like you know same thing as like if you're watching a Christopher Nolan movie, you're gonna get into a whole thing about what's really happening in this movie. It's like, is anything really happening in this movie? If you're watching a Christopher Nolan movie that isn't like, say, something that's like kind of like turning your brain into mush, and you're watching something like a comic book movie of his, like say The Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises, you're like, okay, it's a very fun movie. It's like he does it very stylistically, and then he's obviously doing his same sort of trademarks on this film. So yeah, it definitely does help. It definitely does help when you're a filmmaker and kind of like notices the same type of things when you're watching a movie, but at the same time, as a filmmaker, you kind of like it. It does help with all that stuff too. But
Yeah,
Speaking,
I watched. Yeah.
but yeah, speaking of filmmaking, uh,
But the other films that I made, Hot Seat, Phenomenal Woman, and Creative Writing, all fiction. Two of them comedies. Um, it's like during college, and
yeah,
it's a totally different experience because in college you have the equipment.
oh
You
yeah.
it was like we were all students, right? So it's like an experiment, and we had
I,
we yeah.
sorry, sorry to interrupt, but I was kind of like, this actually relates back to a previous guest. Uh, they were all talking about how when you're filming in college, you kind of like have the space too, where it's just like, it's like, hey, I want to have a classroom scene. Is there any classrooms around here that is unlocked, and are they empty? And just film it within the span, like say, an hour or so. I imagine filming in college, and I know you went to City College. I imagine having a campus like that being a vastly interesting place to shoot, because as a filmmaker you're probably like, oh, I would love to shoot like right up here, there's a nice little walkway between campuses and all that stuff, and like, like as someone is walking, I just imagine someone like I imagine like the moment you're filming on campus compared to say filming on location to some, and I will get this I will get to this in a couple of minutes once we go into jump. Well, once we jump into jump, I should say. uh, but I imagine filming on campus is a lot of fun because one, you have all the tools and tricks that you need because it's the campus film department helping you out and all that stuff. If you need a camera, just say, hey, we need a camera, and we just loan you a camera for the day, and then make sure to bring it back and all that stuff. And then you know it's but compared to when you want to film like on your own, you gotta be like, okay, do I have a camera? How much is that camera going to cost? What is my budget and all that stuff compared to on campus and as a student, where it's like everything is just literally at the tip of your fingertips.
I think that's the reason why I was able to make so many movies while in college. I made like five, and because when you go to film school, your exams is going to be at the end of the semester. You have to make like two or three films.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of film school because you learn so much. There, and you meet your classmates and the networking, but the most important part is that we had the equipment.
Yeah.
Could take, I think it was like 2 or 3 days where you could take the equipment home. And I actually, one of my films is two, actually.
Oh.
Creative Phenomenal Woman, where filmed on campus, you know, and I had, my classmates being in the film as extras, and I had help from the professors. And that was a totally different experience from
Yeah.
went outside of college, right, and made jump because I don't have any equipment. Renting equipment is very expensive,
Oh yeah. I imagine so.
right? Paying the actors, the crew. Well, in college, we help each other. Like
Yeah.
we had like let's say a student, like a classmate, right? Did sound, another one did camera, another one edited my movie, and so on and so forth. And I made a film like in a month, everything. We shot in 3 or 4 days, and then in 1 month it will be like edited and ready to screen. With Jump, it took me 1 year
Yeah.
to make this film, which is it's unusual for me because uh, I like to work fast. I don't like to postpone. I don't like to delay a movie. Like especially for short. For me, it's like, okay, film a short in like 2 weeks. Let's say 1 month. If there is any
Yeah.
problem, and then just move to editing, and then I could move on to other project. With Jump, we had uh, so many issues, and I guess not being truly like very experienced, because you just come from the college and it's your first film, you learn, you make all the mistakes that you have to make, and which is, I'm grateful that
Yeah.
I'm, because you're not gonna learn filmmaking from books or just from like watching a movie. Like, yeah, you can analyze a movie, you could learn from books and things like that, but to really learn the craft, you have to
You have to be on set.
be on set. Otherwise, you know, you're not gonna be able to solve problems that might come. Like for example, on Jump, right? We shot most of the scenes are on location, right? And
Yeah.
as you know, there's a subway scene, and we don't have, for that scene, we did not have a film permit,
Yeah.
right? And it's a huge risk, right? Because you bring your actors, you bring your whole team, and then police officer comes to you and tells you that you cannot film, which had happened. And I somehow was able to talk to him, telling him that it's a student project, and that we going to film there like 20 minutes and we're gonna be out. The thing is that I remember, one professor told me once that in New York City, as long as your camera is not on a tripod, you can actually film in public spaces. And I remember that. So,
Yeah.
and I told him, look, we don't have a tripod, we don't have any lights. It's just one short scene, and we're gonna film really quick and leave. And of course, we film more than an hour. And towards the end of the scene, we had an MTA employee came to tell us that we can't film, and then it's just, I mean, we had to leave, but luckily we were able to get everything we needed. But that's this, guerrilla style filmmaking. It's very risky. You have to have a lot of courage, and it's uncomfortable because it's a public space. People were coming on the subway, right?
Yeah.
And it was one of the busiest subway, like Times Square. And
Oh God.
imagine trying to coordinate all these people, tell them, oh, you can't, you can't get on this subway car, move to another one, because we had our own actors. We had like 15 actors, background actors, who were supposed to be the passengers.
Yeah.
Not, like we couldn't use real people because, first of all, the uh, the the action in the film takes place in the summer, and we shot that scene in October. People were just having, heavy jackets, and it wouldn't be possible. So we had to bring our own people, and but we did it. We were able to do it. But what if I couldn't convince that police officer to let me film? Imagine how much money lost, because you still have to pay the crew and the actors, because
Yeah.
they arrived on set, and it's a lost day. For the Central Park scene, we had a permit. We got it fast, and that was possible to shoot there. But I think in general, being an independent filmmaker, you have to do a lot of guerrilla style, unless
Yeah.
you have a big budget, but we didn't, so we had to work with what we had. And that's I think it's the main struggle, being an independent filmmaker. It's because you don't have the money, and then you have to be creative. You have to film guerrilla style, go on the street and just take the camera and film, which
Yeah.
for the most part, except Central Park.
I remember doing a student film like a few years ago for essentially one of my film production classes, and I needed to do it at camp, at my campus, but I wasn't feeling well that day, so I had to, do everything else. I didn't have a partner. The partner already had a new partner, so she didn't really, need me and all that stuff. Even though I emailed her saying, "Hey, we should go over to another day," where it's like we had enough time on our hands, all that stuff. So it's like, no, it's all right. I already, got that all filmed out and all that stuff. And, you know, filming So my brother helped me out, and we filmed around the house. And filming around around my house, it's like it's an area I know, so it'll be much more easier for me to film because I don't need to, worry about permits and everything else because I'm filming the thing. And once we're on the sidewalk, I could just walk all the way down the block and then walk to the, be very handheld. It's like you don't need anything else. So yeah, I imagine when you're filming out on the street or filming out in a location or a public area, it's a little harder to do because you have a camera crew, you have like maybe 3 or 4 people, maybe even 10 people. No, not 10 people behind you, but like maybe 5 people behind you helping you out, and then you have the actors. You have maybe a couple background actors, maybe something like that. But I imagine all that stuff is, you know, it's a necessary compared to saying, not having a crew at all and just being like essentially the guerrilla style filmmaker where it's just like you do everything by yourself aside from acting, where it's just like you film, you ed, you set up the lights, you do everything else. So when you do have even though it is essentially guerrilla style filmmaking, you still have a crew still helping you out compared to people who actually do it like maybe 1 or 2 people, maybe even 3 people in terms of a crew. So yeah, I imagine that is much more helpful. Especially as a director, when it's just like, hey, we're filming in Central Park today. It shouldn't be that long. Let's film as much as we could for Central Park, and if we need an extra day or so, we'll get a permit and stuff like that too.
Yeah, that's what we did. We filmed there 2 days, and like I never even thought possible that you could film in Central Park, because I remember at the time the DP told me there is no way you're gonna be able to get a permit and so fast, And I did a little bit of research, who to contact,
Yeah,
and there was this amazing woman. She was like, because I told her it's a really like a small project. We're not gonna have cranes, we're not gonna have big equipment that's going to disrupt the park goers, like we're not going to block anything. It's
yeah,
just a tripod. We had and really we had like a tripod, a camera, the boom pole, the actors, and someone sitting with the equipment, and the food all the way up. And she was this amazing woman. She was like, I'll let you film, I'll give you the permit, you just and we made a donation, and we were able to. But like if you see in the film, we were not all the way in the Central Park, right? We are right at the entrance, right? And at the time, like the moment you start filming, you just have to ask people, could you please like just wait, like a minute or two, so they
yeah,
don't, they're not in the frame. And but Central Park was we that's when all the we start having all the technical problems,
yeah,
so it ended up filming in that spot 3 times.
yeah. I imagine filming in a park
Mhm.
would be very chaotic to like an actual park to say at least. Was one, is the light correct? Because one, you got sunshine coming in through the trees, and then as you're filming, the sunshine could be literally be moving into a new direction. So it's like as you're filming the thing, all of a sudden it's like, hey, Matt, just move over here. Thank you. So you just be more still in the thing, and then okay, we're back to filming and all that stuff.
We use all that ND filters. We use, I think, like two, but we had some issues with those filters because of the sun, and also we had a very old camera, a
Yeah,
black magic. I think it was the first model, whatever, and it caused a lot of issues. So I was like, you know what, I can't be doing this, like bringing the cast and the crew and not being able to film. So I decided that we're gonna have to change the camera. And then when it comes to editing, we're just gonna have to color correct it in such a way that the people won't see the difference. So with Jump, we ended up using 3 cameras. We have Blackmagic, we have a Red, and we have a Sony.
no, nice.
And yeah, and
Which I
I
imagine will be very high in terms of rental.
Right. Well, we had, the DP, came with his own camera, and then yeah, you paid a little extra more for the person who has also the equipment, because at the beginning we rented, but it's really expensive. That's why we ended up paying more than what we anticipated. But yeah, it's so these issues, like that's the beauty of being on set, because uh, you learn on your own, what problems there could be and how to solve them. And like you said about this shooting in the public, right? We have that scene where the clown walks, right, and he
Yeah.
walks with a big group of people, right? Those people are real people. Those are not extras. I couldn't possibly afford, neither I or the producer who financed the project, to pay so many people. So we decided that it's best that we have the actor, and it's very uncomfortable too. Like it's like that's why I'm amazed by actors, because it's such an uncomfortable moment, even on the subway. To just be there among people, right? Everybody's staring at you, being wearing a clown outfit. So he was just there among people. I just told him, you're just gonna have to walk, right? Your usual walk among these people, like you're a New Yorker, and that's how we got that scene.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
well, real people.
Now
Yeah.
you mentioned that it took like over a year to essentially with production thing, but when you were writing the short film, how long did that take? Yeah, how long did it take to essentially come up with the idea of Jump, and then writing the feature itself? Especially since short films are like when you script a short film, it's like maybe depending if it's like, and this doesn't have that much dialogue. It has dialogue, but it doesn't have that much dialogue where it's just like pages upon pages upon pages of dialogue. Whereas it's like, you have like minutes of like screen time devoted to these two people talking and whatnot. But it helps that uh, the film, at least to my recollection, it is very minimalistic in terms of dialogue. When you were writing the script, how long did it take you to write the script? Like, how long did it take you to get the idea that you wanted to do this film, and then transfer? I mean, and then essentially write that idea into a script.
Short scripts, no, short screenplays. I don't take a long time. It takes me longer to go back and delete certain scenes or change the dialogue. But like when I have an idea, I just write down pretty quick. And I think it took me like with the editing going back and forth, because I'm not going to write a script and just be happy with it. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and that's not a good thing, because you become so obsessed, and
Yeah.
going back and forth, and at some point you have to stop and be like, you know what, the, the screenplay is done, you have to go into production. So I think it took me, like, with the editing and everything, I think almost 3 months,
Hmm.
and I planned this film to be done in 3 months total, like
Yeah.
after the screenplay, because I don't count. For me, production happens after the screenplay,
Yeah.
So the screenplay, I have the pre-production and everything else, but once production starts, the film has to be, shot and edited, like, because it's a short film, right?
Yeah.
3 months. So I plan this film to be done by the end of 2019, right? Because that's when we started, and it was just not possible. We took a break, right?
You film it, edit it, and then it's released into the.
Right, and then and that didn't happen because we had to take a break, right?
Yeah.
We um like we had the issues, with filming, and also, the money, because we anticipated a different budget, right?
Yeah.
Much smaller than what it came to be. So we had to take a break, gather more funds, and then resumed the filming. So, and plus shooting, you know, we had some reshoots, changing the camera, finding, all that new equipment. It took us like almost a year, you know,
Hmm.
to make this film. And then also the editing. The editing took also a very long time
Yeah,
because
I imagine. So, I imagine you said you wanted to film get this like done out of 2019, and then suddenly when you do have to film, like essentially filmed and whatnot, pandemic struck, and then suddenly it's like you gotta deal with how do you edit film during a pandemic when I imagine you had people in mind to edit this film, and then suddenly it's like, oh, uh, I'm currently living in California, not I can can I help you, like that sort of thing.
well, the editing took a long time because we had some creative differences for the editor. I wanted to take a different direction of this film, and also the color grading. Like I said, we had three different cameras. We had to make sure that there's no difference, right?
Yeah.
That it looks the same. But also, do you hear the noise? There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some construction here.
Ah.
So there were some issues of color spilling. We had some color spilling, and we had to go frame by frame fixing those color spillage. Should I close the window?
Yeah, if you want.
See, it's interesting. Right now, these people starting.
Only in New York.
That's a good thing that this is going to be edited, right? Because let's
Oh
not go.
yeah. Trust me, and I do all the editing too, so it's like trying to do everything by myself. It's like what we were just saying before. It's like trying to do everything by yourself, and it's an easy, relatively easy job because I work on my own schedule. But having someone else who could probably help me, but like it would be a lot more. Uh, It'd be essentially another discussion for another time. It's like, hey, would I need somebody to edit all this stuff? Especially if they were an experienced editor. How much would I be paying them? All that stuff. So it's like,
Yeah, I prefer to work with a crew. I feel like even though I wore more than one hat, I've been like directing and also assisting directing myself, because you don't in a independent film of a small budget, you can't have all the people you need, right? So
yeah,
it's gonna do more things, but I wouldn't film, for example, myself or edit myself. uh, it's just because, especially if you've been on set and you're too much into it, and you cannot see it from a different perspective,
yeah,
and so like I know I have some friends who I like to write, act, direct, and honestly I don't know how you do it. How do you direct yourself? Because you can't uh, see yourself, right?
yeah,
So what happens basically, there are compromises. You have to compromise certain aspects, like if you focus on, let's say, DP, right? If you're a director of photography and also a
yeah,
director, uh, where do you put your focus, on the actors, on the performance, or on the shot, so you have great cinema?
yeah. I imagine. Yeah, I imagine like trying to do something like I know people who do this like all by themselves and they're able to do it with gusto, but at the same time, I think it's just along the lines of I think it's also what we've been taught in college is that when you're working in college, especially in a group, it's like it's a well knit machine. I mean, a well-oiled machine, and then essentially once you're out on the world, you know, you happen to know all these classmates who have to help you in the past, and you want to do a short film in short a short movie or a feature film is like, would they be able to help me as I has helped them in the past as a classmate?
Well, I could answer that question. It depends if your classmates continue to pursue filmmaking, because the reality is many just choose different fields, like they just decide that it's not for them, because
Yeah.
that's about, like you see so many people, they go and it's like, what, I studied this, but it's not my call.
Yeah, I imagine it's a much more like that's the same thing with theaters. I met talented people behind the scenes and in front and as actors who just don't do anything past their theater degree, and then suddenly it's like, oh, a few, I catch up with them a few years later. And it's like, oh, I really haven't done acting. I'm just more along the lines of I work in a office now. So yeah, that's my life.
So if you're not interested anymore in filmmaking, it's not gonna be able to reach to them. And it's also like, everyone moves on, they have their own lives, and it's gonna be harder to get help, and especially if you want them to help you, for free. So it's like it's very hard. I mean, I still keep in touch with my classmates. I mean, not all of them, but not many are willing to come help you on set, because they have their own jobs, their own problems. And I had actually a few classmates came during my last scene. I needed, my last scene takes place in a theater, so I needed people to play, to be background actors, to be the audience. So
Yeah.
a few people came, but it really, really depends how long since you went to school, because as time goes by, it's just you get more distant and distant from your classmates. That's
Yeah. And I think that's a sad truth about going to college, and because you might meet someone great one semester and then the next semester they're just not there anymore because one, it just depends on the type of class you have. It's like I've met great people in random classes, like in a music class, and then suddenly the next semester I don't need that music class anymore because I already took it, and then suddenly it's like I'm back to my regular classes, and the people that you meet in college, they're fun, but I think it's also a way to actually network yourself too. Whereas it's like, oh, I'm, back in my music class, I think I met people who were probably maybe music, like music, not producers, but musicians, like people who study music and stuff like that too. And when I say musicians, I said, violin. I don't know why, but, but yeah, that's the sad truth is that you meet people in college and then suddenly those people in college, they may be able to help you out depending on if they're not busy or if they are still good friends with you or not. Because I've had friends or associates in the past that would just be like, "Well, that bridge is burned. Do not use that bridge anymore." That sort of thing. Because you don't because yeah because you don't want to be in their bullshit again, where it's just like you know this person might be a good person to use, but at the same time, they are fairly difficult to work with because of their own process, or they're just like they come,
Right. It's very
yeah,
important to have people on your team that they think alike, right? That they
yeah,
have the same pace, right? And like I heard so many stories, and I even it happened to me too. When you're going to damage a friendship on set,
yeah,
especially if you bring a friend who doesn't know what it is to be on set, because being on set it's very hard, it's
yeah,
a pressure, and you're basically not yourself, it's I don't know, it's this different environment. And if you have someone on set, which I had a friend, he wanted to become a doctor, like he had no idea what filmmaking is, and
yeah,
so initially, like we had to our friendship, get damaged because of it, because you don't when you are on set and you have these differences, right?
yeah.
And it's not, then especially if someone's sensitive and takes it personal, it's just not, it's better not to involve your friends, you know, in
Yeah.
filmmaking. And everybody says so, that like, if you want to make a film, just don't involve your friends, you know, because you're like, oh, you know what, my friend is an actor, you know.
Yeah.
and and if your friend is an actor and you have to direct him or her, and you know something doesn't work on set, it's just gonna affect your friendship or your relationship, and it's not, you know.
Yeah.
Or just work with, unless the friend is a professional actor and can separate the friendship from the work, you know.
If
Yes,
the friend,
oh,
yeah,
you are my friend. I'm not gonna take you know, instructions from you seriously, you know. So if you are not taken seriously because you know, you are my friend, it's not gonna work, and it affects the friendship and also affects the movie. And it's just I think you have to be careful, because I heard many stories when that
it's
happened.
like it's the same thing that happens with theater stuff. It's like I've seen friendships and people just like come to blows on a theater set because of their friendships, or if they aren't professional or not, and they're just using the clout that they got because of the fact that they knew someone who just got them the job because they were their friend, rather than that sort of thing too. So yeah, uh, but at the same time, that is just the nature of the business, and you can't really help that because you want to be you want to be successful as a filmmaker, and sometimes in order to do that, you have to what's the term? Uh, Crap, I forgot the term, but yeah, in order to be successful, as you have to essentially. Uh, there's a good analogy that I'm trying to think of, but I can't really think of the analogy. But like, you want to be successful as a filmmaker or an actor or a writer or what have you, especially in the performing arts. But you essentially have to not really you have to really put some of the friendships you have on a back burner, especially if you go in trying to be a successful actor and whatnot. Because sometimes there'll be friends who want to like say, "Hey, you're an actor now. Can you put me in a position where it's like put me in the show or something like that?" I'm like,
That's, you know, that's okay. It's good you mentioned that, because I'm a filmmaker, right? And I have friends who are actors, right? And
"Yeah,
like, and I had actually a thing like that happen with Jump, you know. It's
yeah,
like, oh, like I could, you know, play the clown. I was like, yeah, sure, like come, you know, to the casting, you know. And I knew that he wasn't right for the
yeah,
role, you know. And he was my friend, but I was like, you can't. I'm like, you can't. It's just not right for you, you know. And then how do you go from there, you know? Because I mean,
yeah,
I know the person is my friend, but at the same time, I want to do justice to the movie, and it's like, you know, I had so many actors coming, and actually for the role of the clown, I even had a few women uh, who came to audition. It would have been interesting to have a woman as a clown because it's so different, and I would have wanted that. But again, we had a woman. She was a former circus clown, and she was an excellent juggler. And but she just was not, you know, right for this role. And I,
yeah,
when Alfred, because that's his real name, it's an interesting coincidence. You know, his real name is also Alfred. You know, I'm playing Alfred. I remember when he came to casting, because he came like 3 times. You know, because I wasn't. You know, you have to be sure. You know, because the first impressions are different. So uh, for the callback, he told me, like, you know what, like I really identify with this character because I feel like I am him, because he's an actor and he's almost at the time he was, I think, 49. And it was like, you know, he's 49 years old and he's still struggling to
yeah,
have his breakthrough, right? Because he had some roles, you know, he even had a, I think he was in a pilot for an Amazon TV show that didn't get picked up. So he also had a few, he acted in a few feature movies and also shorts. And you know, he's a good actor, but he did not have his he's not what he wanted to be. And you can see, when he plays the role, that he really, or I might be biased, because I cast him, but
And yeah, I think as the director, you have a vision to what character that you want to do. And if some friend of yours to say, hey, I could be the clown if you want and all that stuff, they just want to do that because one, they hear you making a film, but at the same time, it's like what you just said before, there will be, roles for things that would just not be suitable for for people that especially if they are your friend or not, and this is the same thing where it's just like, a few years ago I was casting a play of mine, and sure enough, I casted two great leading ladies. One was my friend, oddly enough, because I went through essentially 5 or 7 different female, since there was two lady German things, it definitely was something that was, I need two actresses that really convey the message that I'm looking for. And sometimes it does help that if it is a friend, they could be very professional and put that friendship aside and just be like a professional actress or an actor or something like that too. But if it's just a friend who is just looking to just get a job, just to be, just to say, hey, I have this job on my resume, I worked with him in the past, they put a vouch for me. I've seen that happen in the past. So yeah, it definitely does. I don't want to say hurt you, but it does like put a little a damper on what you're trying to do, because as a director, you have a strict vision on what you want to do, and then suddenly, once the word is once the word is out that say, hey, I'm doing a movie, it's a short movie. It's like suddenly all the people who you haven't talked to in like maybe 5 years or so, it's like, hey, you're doing a movie? Come on, put me in. Like I imagine that like that happens, and I imagine like yeah, if it's like maybe a short scene and I'm literally I have no one else to put in the background. It's like, hey, you know what? Are you free today? I need a little background person. So it's like, just act like if you need to, like, just act like you're in a restaurant. And meanwhile, here's me directing, the other actors and whatnot. And, you know, again, it's.
I mean, what I do is I give them the chance. I didn't say no. I was like, you'll be here. The casting takes place. Um, that come to the casting, and then we'll see, because I can't tell you, you can't play the role without seeing you.
Yeah.
Say some are really professional and they're good, right? Like they're excellent for that role, and then on set they are just like, oh, she's my friend, I'm not going to take her seriously, like it's like, some people have a problem with following certain instructions, because like it or not, you still have to do what the director says.
Tell
Even
you.
I
Yeah.
ask my actors to improvise, and I even work with this actor on some lines that he thought that it's not natural, because some people, you know, every person talks in a certain way, right? And when you have this
Yeah.
character, right, then you meet the actor, and the actor in the real life would not. I mean, if you're a great actor, of course you're able to, get into the character. But like for some actors, I noticed they just some lines they just don't come naturally to them, and you can feel that, And
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, how would you say it, Like it doesn't matter for me. It doesn't matter. It has to be the same exact line, as long as it means that, it means the
Yeah.
same. You could
It,
change words, just talk in your own words, and but yeah, I mean, it really. I guess it depends. If you have an actor friend and he or she is a professional, I guess there wouldn't be, an issue. It really depends of how mature and how experienced, how seasoned the actor is.
I know we're kind of like getting up for time, because I said I wanted to talk to you for like an hour or so, but we're kind of like close to like almost like in half an hour. But that's because of problems haven't even noticed that weren't even cut out because of editing. Or, but Natalie, that thank you for. Oh, before we go, I have 3 other questions that are fairly easy. One. Do you have any social media that you want to plug?
Yes, I do have. As a filmmaker, to not have social media, that is
That's a crime.
right. Because some of my actors, the main actors, they don't have social media now. I'm like, you're an actor, How else you gonna promote your
Your work.
well? But yes, I do have social media. I have both Facebook and Instagram. And, it's Instagram is Natalia Curea, right? Natalia.Curea. Or no, Natalia_Curea, but and Facebook it's the same.
The
Like,
same. Yeah. Now, do you have any advice to those who are especially aspiring filmmakers who are trying to go into the filmmaking industry, especially with what have you for the past like year and a half?
well, if you really like filmmaking, right? Because it's not easy, right? It's a
Yeah.
cut uh, industry, right?
Yeah, it's a cutthroat industry.
It's very hard. So I feel like only people who really can handle the pressure and can handle this type of environment could is are those people who clearly are super passionate about this, and I feel like if you really want to make a film, is just go and do it. There is no other way. There is no cutting corners of this, and there's always, even though like I know most of filmmakers that I meet, and it's always like this, struggling with money. There is always so many like programs and grants, and that you can sponsor yourself and make movies. But hey, just go for it. Just don't delay. Write a screenplay and pitch it somewhere. Because like some people, like I usually like to do it myself. I do my screenplay, and I go to direct. There are many people that who can't do that. They could just like pitch it and have someone else. Like there are so many networks right now that are looking for new ideas and new scripts. So
Yeah.
I think that's my advice. Is just like go for it. Why not? I mean,
And
you're not gonna know until you try. It's like
oh yeah.
don't.
And like I'm currently doing that with something that I'm trying to like revise a screenplay that I wrote like like a few years ago for whatchamacallit, film class from like my first film like screenwriting class. So it's like a little hard to do, and it's like what you said before. You kind of like there's that professionalism that I mean not there's that perfectiveness necessary as a screenwriter. Is like, am I doing? Is like as I'm reading the thing, it's like cut that out, all that stuff. But yeah, again, that's that.
Advice, not overthinking, because a lot of people are like, I have this great idea for this film, because I just, remember having this friend who was always talking about, having this idea about this film, but there was always something, not right. Like, oh, it's not the right time. So it's like the more you postpone it, right? It's
Yeah.
just, it's further away from becoming reality. So it's just, don't procrastinate, take action and just go for it,
All
and let
right.
it happens.
And my last question, aside from Jump, do you have any other short films or anything that are in? Oh, I have it. Oh, do you have any short films that are essentially in the works or about to be uh, taken off? I mean, that are about to essentially take off.
So right now I'm having a few short screenplays. I mean, because I go from screenplay to screenplay, I'm not I don't write a screenplay, I finish it and then go to another one. I have like a few outlines for a few shorts, but my main goal right now for the near future is to make a feature film.
Yeah.
So while I figure out the logistic and how do I find the funds, do I get a sponsor, do I pitch it, or whatever to make this a feature length film, I'm going to make a few shorts. And hopefully, if everything goes well, by the end of this year or beginning of 2022, I could have my short film, another short film.
Nice, nice.
I have a few ideas. You know, when I went back home and I had feeling so inspired right now. You know.
Oh yeah, that's right. There was another question I wanted to ask, but that's probably I'll probably ask that question the time when we go and actually meet each other for that for one of the film festivals things next month. So I probably have that time to actually do that because I literally forgot about what the question was, but that's for another time. But yeah, uh, Nat, thank you for being a guest today for this podcast. I know we ran long, but because of like what you said before, there were troubling issues with doing your short film, and there was a few troubling issues today with filming this thing. So I feel like uh, a good way to end this is that theater is life, folks, but film, at least film, we could edit out our mistakes. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and looking forward to see this.